Well, welcome back to another edition of the What Podcast. I'm Barry Corder. With me is Russ Jackson, otherwise better known as Lord Taco. And Russ, I don't know about that sweater, man. Is there a good story about that sweater or just
Well, not yet.
not yet? Okay.
Uh,
All right.
no, I just wore my ugly Christmas sweater. It's that time of year, getting festive, getting ready for the holidays.
Well, it makes a statement. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but anyway,
it speaks to someone
I know we're still waiting on those endorsements, and
any day now. Yeah.
if they're not going to give you one, I don't know who deserves one. But
Yeah, I don't know who's getting it if I'm not.
anyway, normally Brad Steiner would be with us. It's December. These are sort of the in between weeks or months, whatever. We on this show we talk about Bonnaroo, as anyone who knows. Why we're here. That's why we started this podcast. It's morphed into a broader show about festivals and music in general. And Russ, I think you know this. I've had a list of people that I've wanted to interview. I mean, and I'm not kidding when I say this. It's like a dream list. I didn't even want to say it out loud, kind of thing. Like my top of my list would be Paul McCartney. I don't imagine
Right.
that's ever going to happen. Next would have been Jim James. Guess what? That happened. We talked to
hmm
him. Probably number
Shoot for the
three on.
stars.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a great interview. Please go back and listen. He was so good.
Yes, he
Number
was.
three on my list is the guy we have today. Believe it or not, and it's probably a name that may or may not jump out to a lot of people. He's not a rock star. He's a rock star in his field. He is the rock star in his field. But for me, the reason I so badly wanted to talk to him is because he seems to encapsulate everything that is meaningful to me about Bonnaroo, if that makes sense. And personally,
hmm
we're talking about Danny Clinch. I'll go ahead and just say it. Look him up. You've seen his work. You've seen Bruce Springsteen in the snow. You've seen Taylor Swift. You've seen Kanye, Beyonce, Jay Z, the Stones. He's the photographer of rock and roll, basically. But he's also a huge Bonnaroo fan, as you will hear, and he gets it right. I mean, he gets
Oh, absolutely.
everything we love about it. He loves about it.
hmm
And I kind of figured that, and I also wanted to say, and I didn't want to bore him with it, but you know, as part of my job covering Bonnaroo for the Chattanooga paper was not only to write about it but to take photographs, and I had some opportunities to take some great bands, and and I told him, and I said on here, I probably shoot 30,000 frames and I get 8 that I'm kind of
Yep.
proud of. You know, he probably shoots 30,000 and gets 25,000 that he's proud of. He's a photographer. I'm not. I've never claimed to be. I get lucky. And we talk about his process. We talk about so much. He was so giving. What, we talked to him for almost an hour.
Almost an hour. It's a great conversation, and like you said, it was not a name I was familiar with when we first started talking about this. But when you start naming, oh, have you seen that picture and this picture? I'm like, oh,
You've seen them.
oh, okay,
You've seen
yeah,
them.
I've definitely seen him.
His
Yeah, if
picture
you go
of
on his website,
yeah,
yeah, he's got just a scrolling feed of all these pictures that he's taken. You're like, oh, I've
yeah.
seen all these.
And he was so funny and so nice, and but I mean, no kidding. I mean, just uh, his role in rock and roll history and his take on rock and roll history and all of that is what I wanted to get into, and we did. Um, he shares you know why a certain very famous band played Bonnaroo. you know,
That's right.
kind of
Yeah,
thanks to
he's
him, helped talk them into it, and why Springsteen ended up playing with you know a special set. So I mean, Danny has been as much a part of rock and roll history as any band you can name, and that's why I think I was so excited to talk to him. So
absolutely. Yeah, he's not just one that shows up and takes pictures and goes home. He's actually built a relationship with a lot of these artists
yeah,
and has influenced them a little bit.
no question. And he was
Mhm.
very kind, and we've been trying to make this work. And special shout out to David Bruce. I am Bonnaroo. Again, if you don't know who he is, go back and look through our archive. David is a special friend of this show for sure, and he
Yeah.
helped put this together. Um, and I can't thank him enough for that. And so here we are. It's December. It's rumor time. Lineups have been coming out. Shaky Knees is incredible. Some of the other ones, we're not going to get into that for this episode. I think we want to get some other guests on to talk about that and
Mhm.
what's coming in future weeks. But this was such a special episode, and Danny said yes, and he picked a date. And if he'd have said 3 a.m., I'd have been there. So we
Me
jumped,
too.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So we
We
jumped
did.
at it, and he was great. And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. And like I said, we're still trying to figure out scheduling. We're trying to have a show every week, even if it's a high five clip, because quite honestly, we're kind of proud of some of the past shows that we've had. I mean, we had Noah Khan, even though he was just with us for a full episode this summer, he's everywhere all of a sudden.
He
And
literally everywhere.
he's
Yeah.
literally everywhere. And I'm so
He
happy
he
for
sh-
him.
yep, he showed up at the top of the Shaky Knees uh bill, and he just did SNL, and
Yeah.
yeah, lots of
Yeah. And I thought the message that he had when he talked to us was just as relevant today as it was then. So we're going to
oh,
highlight
absolutely.
that. So you're
Yeah.
probably going to get a few more high five clips, but hopefully we're going to have a whole lot more episodes like this one, though I don't know. I mean, unless Macca calls me, answers my emails.
He's your last checkbox, right?
He's the top.
Yeah.
If he
Any day
calls,
now.
if he says, "Yeah, let's
Mhm.
do it," then we're doing it. But
Right.
anyway, we've got a lot of other ideas planned, and I'm excited to see what's coming up. So, all right,
Me too.
anything else?
I think we're ready to just get into it.
All
Talk to
right.
Danny Clinch.
Well, here's Danny Clinch, and man, I can't thank him enough. I'm so excited about this. This this was great. Man, I am so excited about this. I can't even hardly speak.
I hear you. I'm excited. I didn't know it was Ugly Sweater Day.
Well, let's explain. So I'm Barry. That's Lord Taco or Russ. We call him Lord Taco. PBR is I should just say, what's that website you use, Russ? He rates beers.
Oh, Untapped.
Untapped. He Danny, if you go to Untapped, he's been rating beers for 6, 10 years, and it's all PBR. That's
One
all he
beer.
drinks. That's all. That's all. I think it's
Oh, that's
hilarious.
funny. That's funny.
I think it's hilarious. So that's why I didn't know he was wearing that sweater either. Or I don't know what we'd have done. But thank you so much for doing this. You are with us because, in part, because this has been something I've wanted to do on the What podcast, which we started in 2018 because we love Bonnaroo. And then we figured out people are talking about Bonnaroo year round. And then we figured out festivals are just a lot of fun and they're
Oh
great.
yeah.
And and because, and I want to mention our mutual friend, David Bruce. I am Bonnaroo.
Yeah.
He helped put this
Yeah.
together, and I'm so thankful for
That's right.
him and reaching out. And I wanted to say too, I actually met you through our friend Ken Weinstein at Bonnaroo outside the media tent one night. You were taking
Of
pictures
course.
of a beautiful woman and her toddler, And Ken said, "Hey, have you met Danny?" And I'm like, "Oh, hi, Danny. How are you?" And then I went inside media, and my friend, the photographer, said, "That's Danny Clinch." And I was like, "Oh my god, I'm such an idiot." Anyway, um,
Anyway,
yeah. So thank you again, and thanks to David. Um, and I just got to say up front, for your background, for your benefit, I've been in the newspaper, was a journalist for 37 years, covered Bonnaroo since about 2002, since it started. Skipped the first 3 or 4 years for a variety of reasons, but been there since 2017. Russ has been there since 2018, right?
That
So
is
we
correct. Yeah.
we love this festival. So that's the basis of this show. So I'm going to ask you some questions based on journalism, industry, photography, music, all of that, but also kind of as a fanboy. So forgive me if
bring
I
it on.
cross some lines because I just love
Bring it
I
on.
love how this all merges, and that's why I'm so excited about this. Um, do you remember? Was it music first for you, or for photography first, and when did they merge?
Well, someone asked me this the other day. They were like, "What's your earliest memory?" It was a family conversation we were having, and I said my earliest memory was laying on my mom's bed while she was getting ready for work. She was a nurse at the time, and my cousin was going to be watching me, and I heard "Hey Jude" on the radio. So like, I guess music came first. Um, Although my mom always had a camera uh, and was always taking photographs. She was the snapshot queen. And so, I naturally wanted a camera when I was really young, so I got one when I was young. But there was always music being played in our house. It was usually 50s music. My folks were into, Johnny Cash and Elvis and Buddy Holly and that. And my dad had a 8-track tape that went from each used car one after the other. He would trade the car in, but he'd always keep that 8-track, and it was the Big Bopper, Richie Valens, Buddy Holly, Elvis, and the like. So I got a heavy dose of early rock and roll, and then I had a great influence in my music. My buddies, older brother and sister, were into the Allman Brothers, uh, Jackson Brown, Bob Seger, Springsteen, um, Warren Zevon, stuff like that. Cat Stevens, T for the Tillerman, I remember. Anyway, just always around music, and I had a love for music. And when it became time for me to decide what I was going to do with my life, I had already been photographing and sneaking my camera into concerts. And my folks said, you got to make a decision about what you're going to do here with your life. And uh, and I just decided to follow my love of photography. My dad was a house painter, so I did plenty of house painting when I was younger, enough to know that I didn't want to do it every day for a living.
Not the dream.
Although I still love to paint to this day, um, and plenty of dishwashing and short order cook and waiting tables and stuff as we do.
But when was that aha? Like for me, all I knew, I love music. I had no talent. I
Yeah.
can't play the radio. I've got older brothers and a younger brother who are musicians. That's all I cared about was being around music, but I had no talent. But sometime in college I realized if I wrote about it, I could get free tickets. So that was the aha moment for me. Uh, what was it for you? I mean, was it when did you figure out if you said you would sneak your camera in? Do you remember when you got paid for a photograph first, or when did they merge? I guess is what I'm.
Some Yeah. Some Well, the first time I made any money off of my photography, I think it was I was in school, in high school, and these guys I knew were like big Ted heads, like Ted Nugent fans through and through. This was way before he started showing his true colors. And So I went out to Six Flags Great Adventure where Ted Nugent was playing, and I took a bunch of photos, and I knew if I blew a couple of them up, poster size, I could probably sell them to my friends, and I did.
Nice.
So that was pretty fun. And so that was kind of a moment where I was like, wow, I can make a living doing this. And then, several other things, I did photograph some weddings and stuff. I worked as a videographer for a wedding photographer. And I also, just, I was going to concerts all the time, and I was just always bringing my camera, and I would get it in one way or another. Um, from, you know, early shows at the Stone Pony, to Live Aid in Philadelphia in 1985, and just every other show that I would basically would hand parts of my camera off to my friends. Here, take this lens. Here, take these rolls of film. Put them in your pocket, and then I'd shove the camera body down my pants and go get in. And um, and then we'd gather up. I'd collect everything, and then I would say, "All right, I'll see you guys at the end of the show because I'm going to go try to sneak up front and get some photographs." And so I just followed that muse and I went to community college, Ocean County College in New Jersey, which is actually Springsteen went there for a couple semesters before they said, "We don't like your kind." I'm not sure they said that, but uh, um, and he ended up leaving. And anyway, then I went to New England School of Photography in Boston, and that was in Kenmore Square. And Boston was a great music town, and I continued my love of photographing. I would bring music into my assignments at school. I had a documentary photography class, and I chose to follow around a rock band at the time that was called Rick Berlin, the movie, and they were similar to like the Talking Heads in a sense. Their vibe was really cool. They were very theatrical, a lot to photograph, and then when I was done there, long story short, I ended up looking for a workshop to do, to just expand my experiences and the people that I knew and my networking and stuff. And I went to the Ansel Adams Gallery workshops in Yosemite, um, and the two of the instructors that I loved the most there was one was Annie Leibovitz and one was David Hockney. And the long story short is, at the end of the workshop, Annie invited me to intern at her studio, which I gladly accepted. And then I, went there and worked my way up to being one of her assistants and traveling around, with her, assisting and stuff, which was really integral to me, learning how it was done and how it was done properly.
Yeah, I want to ask about her. Obviously, was it sounds like that was such a was it a gradual thing, or I mean, I keep asking for this aha kind of moment. Was there that aha moment where, and when was it, where, I mean, for people who are listening who don't know, I mean, obviously, uh, I've been talking about this interview for weeks that it was going to happen, and a lot of my friends are like, who, and I'm like, he's Annie Leibovitz of rock and roll. I mean, come on, this is the guy. When along that path, did not only did you think I can make a living at this, but maybe it was like, this is more than I could have maybe hoped for, or even has it happened to that point yet?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of those moments. For me, I'm not like a very good planner. Like I don't really plan ahead. I
Wow.
just
Okay.
I just live in the moment and go for it. And that's what I continued to do. My girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, was also a very good planner. So we were like a good team where she would, kind of help me stay on track, and while I was, spinning my wheels everywhere, just trying to be somewhere, trying to capture a moment, um, all that stuff, that was, important to me. Just and my obsession with my obsession with documenting the music that I loved. And then a lot of my good opportunities early on came from people that I met through, like the Andy Leibovitz crew, like the other assistants, and that made friends with some of. the assistants and then their friends, and there's like a whole clique of us that really started from the Annie Leibovitz moment, who are still like some of our best friends to this day. Um, and one of them actually got a job at Spin and was one of the photo editors at Spin magazine, and she um, helped me get a couple of assignments early on for Spin magazine. So that was cool. That was an aha moment for me. It's like, okay, here's my opportunity, and can I do it? Like I had to not only do it for them, but I had to make sure that I did it for myself. That I came through for myself, and it was photographing the hip hop band called Third Base,
Hmm.
and and I felt great when I finished the shoot. I felt like I could absolutely see these in the magazine, and being a music fan myself and a fan of music magazines and photography, like I looked at it and I thought, all right, I kind of nailed it. I feel good about this. Um, and then I struck up a friendship with MC Search, who was in Third Base, and I took those images to Def Jam Records creative team called the Drawing Board at the time, Say Adams and Steve Carr, and I I showed them my work, and we were all the same age. Like they were Def Jam was just a startup kind of. Everybody was young. Everybody was like, "Let's do this. This is exciting." And then I showed up, and I was like the same age,
Right.
and like there were no other big name photographers like knocking down the door to just shoot hip hop. Everybody thought it was just going to be a fad and like gone in a year or two. And so they were offering me work like straight away. They were like, "Yeah, young guy like us, like let's have some fun and make some art and do some album packaging." And so that was cool. And then a little bit down the road, MC Search hit me up and said, "Hey, I have this artist that I'm producing and helping get signed um, to Sony Records, and his name is Nasty Nas. And he's got a record coming out. It's incredible, and I think your style of photography will lend itself to what he wants to do, which is document himself at where he came from in Queensbridge." And so I did, and it was incredible. It's an incredible record, as we all know. It's proven to be a long-standing, incredible, masterful work. Um, Always at the top of everyone's favorite records in hip hop. And relationships. It really is about relationships and friendships, and being kind to people and working hard. And if you treat people nice and you work hard, and the talent comes almost secondary. You have to get along with people, and you need to come through when you get an opportunity.
Wow, that answers a lot of. So part of why I'm so glad to be talking to you is, I mean, like I said, I've done this a long, long time. I'm mostly a writer, always, but our newspaper was small, so they would hand me a camera every now and then. You'd have to take a picture. For the last 10 or 12 years, I've taken pictures at like a Bonnaroo. I'm that guy can walk up to the front of the stage in the pit, and I might shoot 8,000 pictures, and I'm going to get one. I'm going to get a good one. I'm not the guy that can go get that good one. When you that first session with the did you have an idea going in how you wanted to shoot it, or were you, like you said, you're not a planner? Did you walk in and I'll shoot what they give me? Um that always fascinates me about how these sort of processes.
Yeah, I think at that time I was probably more of a planner. Like when I started to get work, like I didn't want to screw it up. I wanted to come through. And to this day I still you know plan ahead and collect ideas that I'm going to bring to the table when I show up, and then often I just throw them out the window, because I prefer to be spontaneous, and I prefer to be um, reactive to the situation. To come in, see how the person feels, see if they're up for any of the ideas that I'm bringing in. Do they have any ideas? Do I get there and go, "Oh my God, like this location's incredible"? All of a sudden, my whole idea has changed. So I would always go. not only with a lot of different ideas, but I was also someone who used a lot of different cameras. Today you could come in with a digital camera, and you can literally just shoot 8,000 photos in a matter of time of 15 minutes, and get in there and make it look like any camera that ever existed. And you don't there's got to be a moment in there somewhere. You also have to be have enough good taste to choose the best moment. So there's that. Um, but I think that I I would go in and like I said, I had like old Polaroid cameras, and I was shooting with a Hasselblad. I was shooting with a 35 millimeter camera. I would shoot with little half frame cameras and toy cameras and double exposures and all kinds of weird stuff, uh, just to see like what would come out of it. And the art directors that I was working with at the time, they really loved it because it gave them like it wasn't like you know there are some photographers who lock into one idea, and they'll shoot like back then you were shooting film, so you shoot 20 rolls on this one thing, and there's just like these subtle little differences, whereas like I would go in and I would just shoot a lot of different types of films, a lot of different like ideas, from something that was simple and perfect for like a publicity shoot, or something that was so out there that it was like a double, triple exposure, that just had a feeling to it. So it was like, you were creating like a library of images that the art director could use in any way that they like. I mean, I think, and that's one of the things that I heard feedback wise from a
Okay.
lot of the art directors that I worked with. My friend Say Adams, who worked um, with Def Jam, uh, would say like, well, we could just send Danny out. First couple times we went along with him to make sure he was getting what we needed, and we were so busy that we were happy that we could just say, yeah, we'll just send Danny. He's going to come back with the goods. And
Yeah.
he's going to come back with something interesting. So,
See, that's that trust thing. Because I mean, the other side of it could be somebody's like, man, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He keeps taking, versus
yeah,
that photographer who comes in and takes one shot and said, got it. You know, um,
yeah,
that's interesting. Obviously,
yeah,
I would assume now you've certainly built that trust where it'd be like he knows what he's
yeah,
doing. What if he wants me to stand on my head? I'm going to stand on my head, kind of thing.
yeah,
So you got to build that sort of trust, right?
yeah. And everybody's different. Some people don't need that trust, and other people really do. So,
Yeah. Um, you've done so much. The clubs, the small clubs. You've done the album covers. You've done the magazine covers. You've done festivals, big arenas. You're a year younger than I am, so you kind of watch this industry grow and change. Do you have a preference in the music world as far as where and how you shoot? Do you like the studio stuff? Do you like the live festival? Do you like the big arenas? Do you miss the big arenas? Do you like the small clubs? What do you prefer?
you know what? I like a great life experience, and I feel like that is what I got through photography in my life. Is any of that stuff is exciting to me. I do love being in the recording studio and documenting, capturing moments, being like a fly on the wall. But I also like to direct people and try and capture a great portrait that might end up on a magazine cover or an album cover, or you know or a thumbnail that's this big on iTunes. Um, so I really do love it all. I love shooting live, being there, like maybe hiding behind an amplifier on the stage and like feeling like you're a part of the band in a sense, and even being in the pit is a lot of fun. Um, so yeah, I do kind of I appreciate all of it. Um, you know, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, like shooting a live show, and you have a really energetic band, and you're chasing someone around like who's running all over the stage, and you want to be in the right spot, and sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. You make your decision, you got to live with it. You're like, damn, I was just over there, and he just ran over there. Like, why didn't I stay there?
Yep.
Um, but I also think, and I do think this is interesting. Is there's a lot of photographers out there now, especially now, in the digital world and stuff. But I also feel like there's certain photographers who, for the most part, shoot live shows. That's what they do. You know, and there are people who, um, have a relationship with the band, and they can shoot the live show and be backstage or in the recording studio. And then there are people who are like, yeah, I'm not shooting a live show and I'm not going to backstage, but I'll shoot the album cover, and I'll shoot the album cover. That's what I do. I'm an album cover shooter, publicity type stuff, and I admire all that. But I feel like there's, that I've done kind of all of it, you know.
Well,
Like, I'm excited to shoot the album cover, the publicity stuff. I'll go in the studio and hang out. I'll shoot the live show. I make a concert film, a documentary,
yeah,
you know, as I've done for Bonnaroo, many times.
yeah.
And there I am, like, setting up at Bonnaroo, like a little portrait spot, which the first year was two flats, just kind of made into a corner in the middle of the field. And, you know, then it evolved into what it became, which was like almost two sets, backstage at Bonnaroo and stuff. So,
So there are a couple of things I want to ask you about the different scenarios. Let's start with the probably one of your more iconic photographs, the Springsteen in the snow. That
mm,
that was, you didn't know it was going to snow, right? That was kind of an impromptu, not planned
yeah.
type of
Yep.
thing. You got to love stuff like that, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
um, versus Taylor Swift just recently, Time Magazine Person of the Year, right? And
Hmm.
I saw your note that you've been shooting her for quite a while. That's something I always loved when I was doing the job, was sort of finding a person and following them along. Uh,
Yeah.
so how are those two shots different in relation to? And the third, I was going to ask, because you were in Chattanooga last year uh, with Nathaniel Rateliff, right? Or was it 2 years ago? Um,
What was Chattanooga? I don't know that I was in
Riverbend
Chattanooga.
Festival. Uh,
Oh, no, I wasn't.
you weren't? Okay.
Mm-mm.
That's somebody. All right, then. Um, thought you were
Some
here.
other guy with a hat.
Some other guy with a hat taking a photograph.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm curious about, like, how the planning, how much planning goes in, how those work, those kind of sessions, and then literally when you're like, wow, I'm going to take this picture of Bruce in the snow because this is a cool thing. Uh,
Well, they're both like way, way different.
that's
So they're
yeah,
great examples, to balance off. Um, Taylor Swift was at the Grammys, and I had done all the, portraits of the winners at the Grammys over, 15, 16 years, actually. And so, it was great because here are people, winning an award, for their art and their music, and just feeling really great. They're all dressed up and they're so excited, and they've just won this award, and they come back, and you literally get like 60 seconds to maybe 4 minutes or so, a little more if you know them, to come back and capture them in that very important moment in their lives. So that was cool, and I did that several times. I think while I was there, I'm sure Taylor came back like probably 4 or 5 times, and there were probably a couple years where she won and didn't come back for whatever reason. Same with Jay Z and Beyonce. Beyonce came back a bunch of times to the Grammys, and I just recall 1 or 2 years where she just blew off most of the press, but came back and sat for a portrait for me, because this wasn't like a step and repeat where it said Grammys on the background. This was like a classic, beautiful portrait to memorialize that moment. So that was cool. And just in the Bruce in the snow was basically was he was doing the Broadway shows in New York City, and I was there photographing those some of those shows. And and I said, I just was talking to him one day backstage, and I said, it'd be cool. We should probably you know, take a walk around the city one day because you're owning New York right now. You're kind of staying here. You got a show here all the time. You're in every newspaper, every magazine. Everybody's talking about how epic these shows are. How cool would it be to meet up and just like get a photograph of you standing in New York City? That was the idea. So um, we made a plan, and I texted him in the morning. I said, "Yeah, I'll see you down there." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm good. I'll meet you there. Central Park. 72nd and Central Park." So so I went down, and it started to snow. It wasn't really expecting to snow. That was the interesting part. And it just started to snow, and it got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I feel like we were supposed to meet at like 2 o'clock, and I was looking at my watch, and it was like 2:15. And I said, "Hey, I'm just checking in. The light's really nice here. It's snowing hard, but it's still pretty cool. Are you still coming?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah. I'm in a cab. I just had a hard time catching a cab," which I thought was funny. To imagine Bruce out in the snow trying to catch a cab. I was like, I want that photo. Where's that photo? Anyway, so he showed up, and when he walked out of the cab, he looked at me and he was like, "I hope you got some ideas." And I said, "Oh yeah, I've been here for an hour, wandering around picking out the best spots. And in fact, I want you to just stand right here." This was literally like 20 paces from the cab, and you could see the what I call the vanishing point of the buildings going down 72nd Street with the Dakota on one side, um, and um, and knowing how much actually John Lennon and the Beatles meant to Bruce. And I had him stand there, and the snow was falling and landing on those little rickshaws, the bicycle rickshaws, and that. And I just banged off like half a dozen photographs, and I was like, "Wow, this looks great." And then I could have just went home after that,
Yeah.
but instead we went into Central Park, and we walked around throughout Central Park a little bit, and then I said, "Yeah, I feel good about it. This is great," And he was like, "Oh yeah, I think there's gonna be some good pictures." And he said, "All right, well, I'm gonna walk down to Tavern on the Green and get some hot chocolate." And I was like, "Okay." And he like put his headphones on and put up an umbrella, and then he just like walked down, into the snow, disappeared in the snowstorm, which was
Yeah.
pretty cool. And I actually, of course, photographed that too. Um, and one of the reasons I wanted to photograph him there is there's a famous Richard Avedon photograph of Bob Dylan in Central Park, and I was kind of hoping to get that. Um, and I did. However, it was just covered in snow, which was,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good images there, and they used them. And then when they were doing the album, recording Letter to You, Tom Zimney was there, who's Bruce's documentarian, and he was making a short film about the record. And while they were there recording it, it started to snow, and he captured the snow, and he captured Bruce walking around his property in the snow. And so when they were interested in doing the album packaging, Bruce called me up and said, "Hey, why don't you send me some of those photos, that we took in the snow, because I feel like there's a little thread here." And so I did, and that that's what happened.
Yeah. See, I
Yeah,
love the kind of bookends.
yeah,
The first story where you're taking 8,000 photographs to see, maybe you get one, and then the snow, and you're like, I got it. I got what I needed.
yep,
I'm good.
yep,
But you're here. I can't turn you back away.
yeah. That's right.
Send you on your way. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
how much FOMO do you have at this point? How much, you know, photographers? I can't tell you how many shows I've been at where I like, man, I wish I had a camera. Versus the times I was like, man, I wish I didn't have this camera wrapped around my neck or on the
Mm,
end of my hand. Uh,
yeah.
do you have that, or are you at the point now where you just it's all everything's scheduled? You know what I mean? You don't work.
No, I mean, well, I'll let you finish the question. What
Well,
were you
I
going
was
to
just
say?
thinking, do you have those? Do you even go to shows just to watch a show, without a camera?
Not very often
Hmm.
because I want to. I if I'm going to fully enjoy the show, I usually have a camera. I did, however, go to see Paul McCartney in Mexico City recently, and I left my camera at home and went with my family and some friends. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just not gonna worry about it. And as I look back on it, at the time I didn't really, and I do have severe FOMO. I really do. At the time I really didn't. I just really tried to enjoy the moment. But afterwards, when I was looking at my iPhone photos, I was like, man, if I had my Leica, oh man, this would just be epic. It would be epic.
See,
Anyway,
that's I'm gonna let that wrap around my head because I get it. I mean, the McCartney Bonnaroo is anybody who listens to this podcast.
yeah,
When you say what's your best moment, Paul McCartney 2013, and then there's second and below. For
yeah,
everybody, and it's
yeah,
because we all
yeah,
sat there and sang "Hey Jude" together, right? 80,000,
yeah.
eighty
Sure.
thousand of us. Um,
Hmm.
that's really interesting that you would do that. But you also took iPhone photos. That's even more interesting.
Well, I wasn't gonna let the whole entire moment go by. Come on.
Had to capture it. All right.
Yeah.
Man, I know you're very busy. Russ, I've hogged all this as I told you that I would. You got to have a question. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity.
No, you did great.
Yeah.
Thanks to David Bruce for setting this up. And we talked to him a few weeks ago, and his big thing is that he still shoots on film. Are you fully digital, or do you do a mix of both, or like?
I'm probably 25/75. I shoot mostly digital because it's just my job demands it. People need things
Hmm.
quickly. You need to see what's going on. I did go to recently to Joshua Tree to visit my friend Christopher Thorne, who's in Blind Melon. Built a really nice studio out there called Fireside Sound, and I uh, I brought my Bolex, camera, the film movie camera, 16 millimeter, and then I brought my half frame camera, and I brought um, my Leica. All shot. I shot all film while I was there for the most part. So it feels really good to get some film back.
I do have.
Yeah.
I meant to ask the video is. Did that feel like a big step difference for you, or does it feel like it's just another leg, another part of
Um,
photography?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I feel like there's a big learning curve when you start to use a moving image camera. I mean, you're still framing something up, but it's like how long do you stay on your subject before you're moving around and trying to capture the story? It's all storytelling, and so storytelling with a still camera is a little different than storytelling with a moving image camera. So on my first film that I made, which is called Pleasure and Pain, which was a documentary on Ben Harper, the editor, we got in there. Fortunately, I got in there with her like midway through the film to start like pushing things around, and her first comment to me was like, dude, you got to hold on the shot, you know? Because I was basically just like, as a photographer, you're like, oh, I'm telling a story.
Yeah. One.
Here's a wide shot of the whole picture. Here's a
Mm-hmm.
shot of the hands. Here's the instrument in their hands. Click, click, click. And then if you're doing that with a movie camera, you're like, here's a shot, here's a hand, here's a thing. You're like
Yeah.
whipping the camera around, and you're like, holy shit, what?
Yeah.
So that was the difference.
It's an interesting thing because I've done a little bit of both, and I don't mean to put myself in your world at all, but one of the beautiful things about your photographs and any good photograph is anybody can look at it and it's a story. I mean, it can go anywhere, and then a film it kind of has to have that sort of wide shot in tight shot, blah
Sure,
blah blah. You got to tell
that's
the
right.
story, you got to set it up, so that
That's
they
right.
are very different, aren't they?
Yeah,
um
they are.
all right, Danny, man, like I said, this has been a dream of mine for a long long time. I can't thank you for your time and
Sure.
visiting with us, and I hope to run into you again on the farm.
Is that it? That's all Russ gets to ask me?
this is his
I got my
skill
one
right
Is
here.
question.
that
Yeah.
is that it?
Go ahead,
That's all
Russ.
he's
What else you
got?
got?
That's all I
What
got.
about
I'm just
Bonnaroo?
here
Did we
to.
not talk about
Oh,
Bonnaroo? I thought
well,
that you
all
had
right.
like
Let's
a
do that.
Bonnaroo
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
band
yeah.
on
I
it.
did want to talk about I mean, because you've seen it all. How do you think things have changed, or have they changed? Not just Bonnaroo, because to me, the beauty of the Bonnaroo Festival is to me, it changed music. It
It
made
did.
live music fun again.
It did. And I think it all started really like that whole vibe obviously like was rekindled by Perry Farrell and Lollapalooza.
Right.
And then that kind of faded away. And then Fish picked up the ball and did Clifford Ball and Lemon Wheel and all those great festivals. And Bonnaroo came in and saw an opportunity there. And collaborated with some of the same artists like Russ Bennett, who handled all the creative side of Bonnaroo, and then just like the Superfly partners just were just like had great ideas about bringing in the art and having silent disco and having super jams and all that sort of stuff. And you know, it started out like what I can't remember the first lineups or whatever, but Fish, Widespread Panic, Ween, all that sort of like kind of jam band
Right.
stuff, and segued into bringing us bands that nobody had ever heard of, like My Morning Jacket and Kings of Leon and the Black Keys, and sort of like I mean, Brandy Carlisle, Maren Morris. Like, I just feel like all of a sudden we were like being introduced to these incredible bands that like were playing on a Sunday, like morning at noon before anybody was even up. And My Morning Jacket is playing in this tent. There's maybe like a couple hundred people there. Well, the next time they show up, there's a couple thousand people there because everybody's spreading the word and how everybody wanted to be there and weren't. And so Bonnaroo started to the best part was being introduced to all this,
Right.
these new artists and stuff. And for me, it was a great opportunity because, like I said, I started out photographing there with two flats put together, doing portraits, and that that really came from my work that I did with the Beastie Boys for the concerts for Free Tibet that they did in the late '90s, and I did a portrait studio there for that for those shows. And uh, Jonathan from Superfly, said, "Hey, you should come and do the same for us, at Bonnaroo." So I did, and it slowly built up, and I just captured all these artists that we were talking about and more coming through. I mean, I just posted recently a Jimmy Buffett photo that I took when he came strolling by the portrait spot, um, and then there's all these like all the sort of the super jams were amazing, but I also think about like you know I had a hand in telling Radiohead how cool Bonnaroo was, and that is the closest thing to a European festival that they would see. And they were, not so sure about doing it. And when they ended up doing it, they absolutely loved it, and it was one of the best sets they had done up to that point.
As a fan,
And
can I thank you right there? Can I just
yes, sir,
thank you?
that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And then I also had something to do with, well, a lot to do with Springsteen sitting in with Fish that year. Um, Bruce had come and done the festival, and he stayed an extra day, and he was watching Citizen Cope from the side stage with his one of his sons, and I wandered over to Bruce and said, I said, "Have you seen Fish before?" And he's like, "No," and I was like, "Well, they're tonight, and those boys can play anything, and they've done these holiday shows, like on Halloween where they." Take like Remain in the Light, or they do this record or that record. And Bruce was like, "Oh, damn, all right, wow." And
Nice.
like an hour later, I ran into their tour manager, Brad, and he said, "Hey, Bruce just hit us up. I think he's going to come and sit in. Like, come over and photograph while they're rehearsing." And I was like, "All right."
Wow. Once again, thank
um,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, and I'm grateful too, for those opportunities and again, life experience, through that. And I've couple of of made a couple of films about Bonnaroo, 270 miles to Graceland, which is the second Bonnaroo film that was made. Someone else made the first one, and then I made another one. I don't even remember what year it was, but it was the year that Trey played with the orchestra. Um, and I don't even know that they gave it a name. I feel like it's just like Bonnaroo, whatever year. But it's so much fun, and all the relationships. Talk about relationships, and you know all the crew that I used to photograph or um, to film those shows are camera operators and producers and people that are still great friends of mine to this day and who have gone on to make their own films and become directors, and Colleen Hennessy and Jojo Pennebaker and Aaliyah Lissy and Linda Narvaez and all these like Taryn Gould and stuff, all these really super cool people. So that's been fun. Um, and I mean, I could go on and on about Bonnaroo. It's really was
Well,
it was a great moment.
so the evolution for me was, again, working at the paper covering music. uh, in the 80s, 90s, there was the punk scene, there was the zines, and everything was whatever you wanted to do, and it was great. And then
Hmm.
we got into the arena rock sort of thing, which was very exciting, and I loved it. But then it became very familiar. It didn't matter whether it was
Yeah,
a country show or a hair metal band show. It was, third song, say hello Chattanooga. Fifth song, introduce the band. I mean, it was all very
right.
choreographed, and it became
That's
very
funny. Yeah.
same. And
Mm,
then it was, I don't want to say boring because it beat any other gig I could have had. But
of
then
course.
2002
Yeah.
Bonnaroo uh was like, oh my god, what is this? And then since 2007 I've been going every year. And
Mm,
you nailed it. It was like, now I want to discover new bands. I don't want to
yeah.
I want to go see the McCartneys and the Radioheads, but I also want to come home
That's right.
with a whole list of new bands that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And it
And that's what they gave us for
a
sure.
hundred
And
percent. And that's what
um
changed all
and
that.
yeah. And then I'm now a festival founder and promoter for See Here Now Music Festival, which is on my hat
Nice.
in Asbury Park. And we try to do the same thing. We're bringing in artists that people hadn't heard of, and you know, uh, people come to us the next day and they're like, they had seen like Sema Funk or Ron Artis or
Yeah.
you know even even Nathaniel Rateliff who played this year. They're all people are coming and saying, "Wow, I wasn't familiar with that act, and that's like my favorite band now." So
Yeah.
bringing that to Asbury Park's been really cool, and I would like to mention also, um, you know, not only being able to bring something like that to Asbury Park, which is pretty epic. We had the Foo Fighters and the Killers last year as our headliners. I'm not sure how much you know about See Here Now, but it's a really cool festival right on the ocean. We have a surfing component, we have an art component, um, and I have a gallery in Asbury Park called the Transparent Clinch Gallery, and it has showcases my photography, and we have live music there as well, and all sorts of events, little fashion shows and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and and I also just started dropping T-shirts that have my photographs on them, like real simple, like old school, like almost punk rock style T-shirts, skater style,
Yeah.
old school, just like a photograph with a little inscription. This is Beastie Boys, Los Angeles, Danny Clinch underneath it, like real simple. It's called Clinch Collections, and we just dropped the Beastie Boys, Run DMC, Green Day, Dave Matthews, Fish, Bruce Springsteen, um, and we have Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash. It's quite a collection, and they're super well made T-shirts. And I thought I'd give them a plug because
Yeah.
it's a startup and we're having a good time with it, and
How much are these
it's
guys
something
coming
I'm
to
proud
you
of.
versus you going to them? How much are you? You said you're not a planner. Do you have a list of people I'd like to photograph? Are they coming to you at this point, or is the labels coming to
Mm.
you? How's it working for you at this point?
It's probably a little bit of everything. I mean, I'm not a planner, but I'm a hustler, you know. So,
Gotcha.
I, uh, you know, if I want something, I'm gonna go find it. You know, I mean, I made my career of showing up to places, you know, whether I was invited or not, and trying to capture something. Um, so, you know, with that said, you know, something like Bonnaroo and the Grammys was super cool because people were there and they were, you know, I could then encourage them to come and sit for a portrait, which is always great. And then other things, you know, it's like I go to Newport Folk Festival every year and they have, you know, and See Here Now every year, and there's just great artists wandering around. A lot of them that I know, some I don't, where I can capture these great moments of rehearsals and hanging out and pre-show
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. So
Two things. You mentioned community and getting to know people, and that Russell agree with me. That's what we love about Bonner. That's why we're doing this podcast. I mean, we've been doing this since 2018 because it's a community.
yeah,
I didn't know Russ
Hmm.
before 2000. We don't know each other except for this podcast
yeah,
and a ton of people like that. Ken Weinstein,
and Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Paps
Yeah.
PBR, and yeah,
Yeah,
and
brings people together.
so there's that, but also that sense of, like with David Bruce, he had an idea and he
hmm
did it, and Bonnaroo is cool enough to embrace it. You know, you
Yeah,
got a great idea, talk to me, tell me,
that's right.
and let's make
You
it
know,
work.
yeah, and it's not always the most talented people that have their idea and push it through. You know, it's like it's a balance. You know, some people who are so super talented and no one will ever know them, right?
Right.
And then there are
Hmm.
some people with medium talent that are just so good at networking and hustling and have ideas and they're executing them and they're getting them done. And there's something to be said for both, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Yeah.
and if you're able to balance it out and have some talent as well as some hustle, you know, you can get out there and make a living, you
And
know,
a lot of
and have great life
and a
experiences.
lot of passion, which is, I
Yeah.
think, David and you and everyone else. So,
Yep.
all right, Russ, again, man, you nailed it. Any other anything else?
Russ, you talk too much.
This is my best one yet.
Danny, man, I can't thank you enough. Love the work, obviously, and
Thank you.
love the life, love what you've done, and I appreciate you giving us so much time.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, all right, there you go. Like I said, I'm still tingly. I'm still. I may not come down off of this high for a while. It was,
It was almost as fun interviewing him as it was just watching you just kind of light up like a schoolboy. Just
I get so nervous. I told some friends, I've done interviews now for 40 years, and Brian Wilson was. I was so nervous. I was convinced I was going to go Chris Farley. Um, I wasn't too fearful that I would pull, the Chris Farley, Paul McCartney on this one, because there was a lot to talk about. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I knew there was a lot of, but you just never know how the guest is gonna be, and he was great from the jump.
Well,
So,
Danny was, yeah, so easy to talk to. He had a lot of good stories. Yeah, just it went great.
in fact, we tried to end it, and he was like, "Is that it? You're not gonna ask me about?"
Yeah, we almost didn't talk about Bonnaroo,
I
and then he was like,
know.
"Oh, don't you want to talk about Bonnaroo?" It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Yeah, how
yeah.
much time you got?"
Yeah, I really, I kind of had, that feeling like the assistants off to the side pounding on their wristwatch or something, or
Hmm.
he's giving the high sign, cut
Yeah.
it off. No, he was great, so much fun, and I, we'll see. All right, well, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, though I doubt that's possible. But anyway, I hope you do. I did.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Feel free to drop a like, rate the podcast, share it, and we appreciate it. We'll be back with more, hopefully soon.
Hey, and thanks to Consequence for running these. We
Oh,
don't
yeah.
always say that enough. So, yeah, please do. Isn't it for us to like and share and check out all the other Consequence podcasts. All right, guys. See you soon.
Consequence Podcast Network.